أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين روحي وأرواحنا لتراب مقدم الفداء فقد قال الله في كتابه المجيد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله ورسوله إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم صدق الله العلي العظيم. Please recite salawat. For the hastening of the reappearance of our Imam, please recite a louder salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And so that there's a quick and swift victory for the people of Palestine, and that we can soon have the ability to pray in Quds, please recite the loudest of salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil faraj. Assalamu alaikum jami'an. What we had been talking about in the previous days was how we can go beyond the trappings of the self, the ego. We talked about the family in various dimensions of it. Then we started to talk about a concept of family that goes beyond blood relations, a concept of family that's based on ideals, based on an idea of accepting Tawheed, of accepting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how that forms a bond as well. And then that bond on its own creates its own rights and responsibilities. Yesterday I had mentioned a hadith very briefly. I had introduced it. Inshallah, I just want to talk about that hadith in a bit more detail. And then inshallah, maybe we can open it up for some discussion and question and answers and things like that, especially if it's focused on the events in Palestine. The event was this, that there's a person by the name of Ishaq ibn Ammar who is living in the time of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. We see that he says, he's narrating this hadith himself, he says that I came into a bit more money, so that I gained a little bit more money than before. And when it became known that I had a bit more money, the Shia started to gather outside my door and to sort of ask for help and sort of see if there could be anything that could help them. And to stop that from happening, he put a guard at the front of his door to disperse the people. Not because he didn't want to help them, but because he didn't want them to become recognized. Because if the Shia were recognized as the Shia, then they would become persecuted. And so he didn't want that to happen, and so he put a guard in front of him to make sure that nobody gathers outside his door. He says that later on I went to meet Imam Sadiq alayhi salam during the Hajj time. He goes there and he says salam to the Imam, and the Imam sort of responds to his salam, but he's frowning. His face is very severe when he's looking at him. So he asks the Imam, what is it that has changed my condition, in your eyes, close to you? What is it that's, changed my hal in front of you? And the Imam responds by saying, تَغَيُّرُكَ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Says that the way that you've changed with respect to the mu'mineen. And then he explains to the Imam that I didn't do it for any sort of ill will. I don't have any ill will to the mu'mineen. I want to help them. I just didn't want them to be, recognized. The Imam says it doesn't matter. Right? Your intention might have started out like that, but the effect was that you didn't have this good relationship with the mu'mineen. And he says that, don't you know, Ya Ishaq, that if two mu'mineen meet each other and they shake hands, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts between their hands 100 levels of rahmah. 99 of them goes to the one who is ashadda hubban lil akhir, the one who has more love for the other. And one of those levels goes to the other person. So 99 goes to the one that loves the other the most. This is, don't you know, Ishaq, that when these two mu'min hug each other so that their necks meet, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala drowns them in mercy. He says, don't you know, Ya Ishaq, that when they start talking to each other, desiring nothing except ibtigha wajh Allah, they don't want anything except seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His pleasure, then their sins start to drop like leaves from a tree. He says, don't you know, Ishaq, he keeps on going, that if they sit together, talking to each other, asking each other their hal, or how they are, right? Then the angels speak to each other, saying that there's a secret happening here that we cannot contain. We have to be removed from here. Meaning that the levels of the mu'mineen at that time goes above the angels in that small interaction. The point of this hadith is to show how much we can gain through this relationship between the mu'mineen. How much we can gain. And the opposite, how much we lose if we don't have this relationship. If we don't have the fundamental, absolute, bare minimum care for each other, that if there's someone undergoing trials and tribulations, someone who's going suffering, you see, this is what's happening in Palestine right now is not something of a matter that I have to be a Muslim even to appreciate the suffering. There's children that are dying of starvation. That's not something that requires me to be a Muslim or even for them to be a Muslim, for me to recognize that it's a tragedy. But they are Muslim, and that makes it a higher right upon me. They have a higher right on me. So I should be concerned. I should be praying for them. That's the least right that they have upon me. We see that the verse that I quoted in the beginning says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم. Says, O you who have believed, O you who have Iman, answer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Rasul when they call upon you to that which enlivens you. We have to understand that the true life is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not over here. We have in the munajat of Imam Ali that we recited a couple of nights in two of the nights of Layali al-Qadr. It says that أنت الحي وأنا الميت وهل يرحم الميت إلا الحي. We say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are the living and I'm the dead. And who will have mercy on the dead except for the living? The reality of our situation in front of Allah is that we have nothing. Anything we have, everything we have is from Allah. My life is not my own. And so why am I stingy with it? If I fear for my life, it wasn't mine to begin with. Why do I care? All I should care about is that it's being spent in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's all that matters. And for most of us, we don't even have a situation of sacrificing our life. It's not even to that extent. Okay? The repercussions that we might even face, for speaking up about Palestine, is that maybe the people around us don't like us too much. Maybe we lose our job. Maybe we get passed over for a promotion. These are the repercussions that we're fearing. Does that seem like something that should prevent us? None of that is something that is, it wasn't even ours, right? It wasn't something that we had to begin with. It's all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the one who gives. He's the Raziq. If everything is in His hands, then I trust my affairs unto Him. I don't need to guarantee it and think that I can even guarantee it with what things that are in my hands. No. Everything is in His hands. And so this is the perspective that we have to develop. Not some arbitrary thing, but based on this core tenet that we must have an absolute amount of care for the mu'mineen. That the iman that we share binds us together, binds us closer than blood, closer than the ties of blood. And if we understand that and truly accept that, then we cannot rest easy when we see the mu'mineen suffering, wherever they are. Today we are talking about Quds, tomorrow we can talk about something else. Wherever they are, it doesn't matter. But the point is the same. When when the mu'mineen are suffering, we cannot rest easy. Inshallah, I'll stop here. If there's any questions or discussion, inshallah, we can move forward. Bismillah. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. اللهم صل على محمد آل محمد. Put on the spot by someone other than me too. I don't know if there was actually a question. It seemed like more of a comment. I can't answer that, but I'll make a comment about your comment, inshallah. If we look at the ayat that describe Bani Israel, we'll find something interesting. And that's that if you compare their characteristics and look at their characteristics, you'll find that most of them apply to us as a people now. That most of the things that how the Quran is talking about Bani Israel probably applies to the Muslimin at this time. And that should frighten us. That should terrify us. Because there's no good end for Bani Israel that's described in the Quran. Right? But if you look at their characteristics, how they treated their Prophet, how they treated their religion, you'll see that there's very, very, very massive amounts of similarities with ourselves. You look even how they were awaiting Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, their promised, person, and how we're awaiting, our final Imam. You see even more similarities. Right? You see that how they reacted when the Prophet came was that they rejected him because he didn't agree or he didn't seem to be fitting with what they wanted. He wasn't from their tribe. He wasn't supporting their cause. Right? And then so you see that maybe the same thing will happen to us as well. So one of the first steps in all of these things, right, in anything that we're having, whether it's, and this is extremely much more important in any type of political activity and social activity, where we're going more and more outward, is that we stay true to our core beliefs. At the end of the day, Whether it's Palestine, whether it's Bani Israel, whether it's some other qawm, whether it's some other tragedy, it doesn't, whatever it is, we don't put the ends and the results of things in our own hands. Everything is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hands. We don't control anything. We have obligations, duties towards Allah. Our duty isn't to guarantee the results. Our duty is to do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. Even says that to the Prophet, right? The Prophet can't change the hearts of the people. If the Prophet can't change the hearts of the people, who are we? Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change the hearts. And so we're not commanded to results. We're commanded to our obligations. And it's to have a shift in the way that we perceive our paradigm for our decisions. A lot of times we get sucked into this idea of thinking that we need to do something to free Palestine. Right? That is the objective that needs to be accomplished by my hands. No, that's not the objective that needs to be accomplished by my hands. Right? Yes, it's something that we desire, we ask for, we pray for sure. But the results are not in my hands, they're in Allah's hands. And so I need to ask myself the question, what is it that Allah wants from me right now? That question is something that is difficult to pose honestly to myself when the stakes are high. And so we have to develop the habit of asking ourselves that question when the stakes are low. In the everyday, day-to-day minutiae of our life, we have to be asking, what is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from me? When it becomes a habit that my disposition, my attitude, the way I make decisions is to first see what is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from me, and then I decide what to do based on that, then it becomes easy to have that as a way to decide in the difficult decisions. When it's something that I see there's a lot of sacrifice. So perhaps, right, I'm not sort of contradicting the previous point, but I'm adding a different aspect to it. The way to develop a passion for Palestine, for this cause, is to be asking ourselves on a daily basis, what is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from me? And see, naturally, it'll extend to this area. Naturally, it'll push us to this area as well.
How do we recognize real things of the enemy? Sometimes they come to our face. One day they're killing us, torturing us. One day come and laughing at our face, changing to us very fast. We forget everything. Reality.
Yes. It's a difficult question because on the battlefield, it's easy. On the battlefield, it's easy to recognize who your enemy is because they're right in front of you. They're on the battlefield. But when we're not on the battlefield, that's when it's very difficult. In this day and age, it seems like haqq and batil is all mixed together a lot of times. There's very few times that you find batil on its own, pure falsehood. Usually the people, they mix it together because nobody accepts true falsehood. Everyone has to mix it. That's why people who are perpetrating the greatest crimes against humanity are the ones who always say human rights. Right? It's because they want to mix it together because nobody will accept it, or their actions, if they don't justify it. There always has to be some sort of justification. And so the way that we need to look at it is we have to understand what are the objectives of Islam, what are the objectives of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the goals that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, and then find the people who are working for an objective that's different. See that where are their actions. For example, I know that the ultimate objective of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ultimate objective is for the upraising of Tawheed. That Tawheed should be the accepted ideology of every person on this earth. If I see anything that's working against that objective, then I know that they're working against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No matter if they're shaking my hands, no matter if they're friendly to me, no matter if they have the best of akhlaq with me, I know that they're working against that objective. I'm not grading them as a person. That's something different. To grade them as a person, are they a good person, bad person? That's between them and Allah. but I'm grading their actions. Their actions are something that is working against the cause of Islam. And so we have to work against that. So usually when you boil it down to those things, when we identify what we should be working towards, then it's easier to find out who the enemies are because we see that they're opposing those things. Our difficulty is that we usually don't recognize what we should be working towards in the first place. And what we should be working towards is on multifaceted level, right? One is it on an individual level, one is on a family level, a societal level. All of those things matter. And so we see that, for example, if there's a concept in the United States, a culture in the United States that is directly going against family values that we have, then we see that this culture is the enemy. That this culture is not something that can be maintained and tolerated and said is in line with Islam. No matter if the people are very nice and kind to us and all of this, if no matter if we have, the opportunities and the American dream and whatnot, it doesn't matter. If that family value is something that is corrupting our family values, going against the way that our family structure should be, then we know that it's something that we need to fight against. So it's important that we recognize what we should be moving forward to, and that way we can recognize the enemies from there as well.
You talked about the relationship between the movements. Of course, Quran just defines the movement, and Muslim is separate. The iman have not reached to your heart, but you call yourself a Muslim is okay. But in general, we see like a relationship between Imam and Muslim. See that those that are congruent in their dealings, and then there are those that we see a crash in Muhammad, they do things. So there's becomes basically like a right of one person that wants to obey the Quran and then to be fair in everything, but you see the other person might actually abuse him in the normal, in the manufacturing normal. Since you talked about this relationship, could you a little bit elaborate between when we have different personalities?
So the core, what brings the mu'mineen together is their iman. Right? It's in the name, the iman. Iman is not something that can be split from actions. So we see that if I have proper iman, then it reflects in my actions. I must be doing the wajibat, I must be avoiding the muharramat. And so if I see that there's a mu'min who's doing ghash in a mu'amala, for example, who's doing trickery and deception within the transactions, then I see that there's something wrong with their iman. Right? Now, does that mean automatically I throw them away, I discard them, I cut off ties? No. We have so much, we should have so much devotion to the mu'mineen that my instinctual reaction to seeing someone cheat me, if they're a mu'min, is that I want to cover up their sins. I want to make sure that nobody else finds out. I want to make sure that, even if I'm hurt, I'll handle it. I can talk to them privately. I can take them to the side. But I don't want anyone else to find out. I want them to get to a state where they don't need to do it. I think to myself, maybe maybe they're in very bad financial situation. Maybe that's why they did it. Maybe there's something I don't know. Maybe, shaitan just, tricked them for a little bit. Whatever it is, I give them excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse. Right? And I look after them and their honor as if it was my own. It's almost as if I drown their bad action with my good relations with them, to the point that they become ashamed of having that kind of relationship with me. Right? It changes them. That's how the mu'mineen are with each other. They drown each other's bad actions with their good actions. But yes, there approaches a time when someone is by name a Muslim, but their actions are so divergent and so, harmful that I cannot maintain relations with them. Right? But that doesn't mean that they're a mu'min, but I don't have relations. It means that they're not a mu'min, right? That they disqualified themselves from that relationship. We have a minuscule, I wanted to talk about this verse maybe in the future days, but I'll mention it now. I'm not remembering the exact Arabic of the verse, so I won't quote the Arabic exactly, but the gist of it is that until the people of Mecca do hijrah, then they don't qualify for your wilaya. They don't qualify to be these close friends with you, right? Until they do hijrah. So it says that the ones who did hijrah and the ones that helped them in Medina, الَّذِينَ هَاجَرُوا وَآوُوا وَنَصَرُوا, these people, they have wilaya with each other. But the other ones, they don't qualify for that walaya until they do the hijrah. Right? It says that you can't even, and it says that yes, if they ask you for help, then you have to help them. Right? If they ask you for help, you have to help them. But they don't qualify for that close ties, close bonds. So this is something that we have to see. Like even the Quran is saying that these people are the mu'mineen, they're believing. But they have something lacking. That's why they didn't migrate. That's why they're not ready to sacrifice everything. And so they don't qualify. The close bonds, those are between the ones who are sacrificing everything. They're ready to give everything for each other. I don't know specifically, but it's not far-fetched. And that's probably, we have many, the hadith that we have regarding the sins within transactions are extremely severe. Right? If you look at it, like if you look at, what backbiting is, right? You see that the sins relating to, like the punishment of backbiting is said is a multiple of zina, like much more than zina. Then you see what is the sin of riba, of something that's haram within a transaction, is much more than backbiting, right? So you see that sins that are within the transactions are much more. The reason why is simple, is that their effects multiply, right? Because they're in a societal thing, it ruins the relationships between people. It ruins the fabric of society because there's a basic thing that I can rely, how we rely on each other for this trading of commodities, for our livelihood. If that is removed, then it removes the basis of trust between each other. And so that ripple effect is something I can't even contain sometimes once it's been done. And so that's, is definitely there. Those are extremely severe things that we have to look out for.
Continuation was this question, how do we, somebody can service for enemy? The remote soldier, the translator, or something like that. This explains, and that's very good.
So obviously, there should be no sense of helping the enemy, but the examples that you just gave of being a translator or being a soldier are in fact maybe the lowest forms of help. There's much bigger forms of help that perhaps we are doing on a more regular basis that is more subtle. And that is that developing an apathy towards religion, not caring about our Islam, about the religion that we have, not caring for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is something that is a greater help to the enemies than any other physical help in giving of arms and translating and things. Although that is a very severe amount of help as well, I'm not denying that. But this thing of letting go of our religion is the greatest help to the enemy that we could do. Or even, sometimes even worse, developing an idea of religion that's like an American Islam, or saying something like that where I can have these two pieces of my identity fit together like that. It doesn't work. Or presenting Islam like a individual Islam. I can be a Muslim in my private life, and I can be an American in all other aspects of my life. That's the biggest help that we could give to the enemies, is to present something like that. No. If we're Muslim and truly Muslim, then it shows in every aspect of our lives. But yes, obviously these physical acts of helping the enemies of Islam need to be avoided. And they're a great sin to be doing such a thing. And will definitely be held accountable for those things and the effects that it happens, especially if it leads to the oppression of Muslimin, then that's something that we definitely don't want to be on our shoulders on the Day of Judgment.
For example, you paying income tax, all the income tax, buy the weapon is given to Israel, and uh, give him a guns and all those things, and jumping in Gaza Street, or any other country like Iraq or Afghanistan. What we should do, pay an income tax, or what's the
So I'm not going to get in trouble with the law and to be publicly saying on video that's being streamed that you shouldn't pay income tax. No, you have to abide by the laws in the country that you're in. That's there. But everyone has to make a decision. Everyone has to realize the situation they're in, see the effects of their actions, and calculate the pros and cons of being in the situation they're in, and decide based on that how to change and shift their circumstances of their lives in order to be in a better situation. I don't think that requires someone from my position to say something about what exactly to do. I think everybody needs to figure that out themselves. Everyone needs to investigate themselves. What is the cause? What are the effects of their own actions in their own day-to-day lives? What is it that their money goes to? What can they sort of handle? What can they not handle? What is it? Is there some way to avoid things? Is there not? That's something that every person has to figure out themselves. It is an answer. The answer is that the onus is on you. The obligation is on the individuals. Why are you looking for me to give you something? If I say something, will you do it? If you promise to do it, then I'll say it. But it's okay. You can't promise it. It's okay. I won't say it.
Sayyid, this is sort of a comment, and because also we have a lot of rules, so I like to maybe little bit off the line of what we have.
Sure.
Human Shaykh had a line about the philosophy of the religion. And in one of the books says that the philosophy of the religion is that the values that you uphold and protect, it is the same value protects you. And this is the best framework. So the highest value, the better the value, that you protect the values of Islam and the principle of Islam, the same principle protect you against the outside influences. And I think it's kind of clear in the sense that you get two-way street. And what we see here that I think is very useful, we have a lot of times that they come to the center or they come at specific times, but they don't show up as often they should be. And could you a little bit elaborate the importance of just based on the limited time that you have?
Honestly, I place most of the fault on the adults, not on the youth. The youth do not come and don't have a fervor and passion to come because they don't see the point of coming. They don't see the benefit of coming. They don't see the use in coming. And most of the time that happens because they weren't taught or introduced to Islam in a manner that made sense to them, that made it seem as if something that was worthwhile to devote their lives to have as a way and as values that they should be fighting for. Until that is something that is introduced to them and made them aware of that, then we shouldn't have high expectations for them to want to come to the centers. Obviously, they wouldn't. If they have a decision that either I could be hanging out with my friends or and having fun and entertainment and sports and video games and whatnot, or I have to go to the center where I have to listen to this boring speech from some random person on a member, then obviously, see, he's even shaking his head. He's agreeing. So obviously, obviously they wouldn't want to come, right? And that's something that we have to, the people who are older have to work on in making Islam something that they understand, not making it something that they don't understand. One of the biggest and fundamental roadblocks of that is when the youth see hypocrisy. when they see, especially among the people who are adults, that when they're in the center, they're always talking about Islam. But if you meet them outside the center, you'll see them not obeying the laws of Islam. You'll see them shaking hands with the opposite gender. You'll see them not wearing hijab. You'll see them not praying. You'll see them eating food where they shouldn't be eating. You'll see them this and this and this and this and this. When the youth see that, how are they going to gain respect for anything that the elders say? They'll lose it all. And so I put most of it there. But at the end of the day, the youth eventually are their own people too. They have to make their own decisions. Nobody can lay the faults of their actions and their decisions on anybody else. They have to take responsibility for themselves. Youth usually have this thing within them that they want to be treated as adults. If you want to be treated as an adult, then you have to start acting like an adult. And the first thing to be when you're acting as an adult is to ask deep, important questions to yourself. What are you doing in life? And what is it all for? What are you struggling for in life? The big questions, the important questions. You have to start asking them yourselves those questions. So that would be my advice to a youth, is that if you have a desire to be treated like an adult, then be like an adult. And an adult sees things in the long term. The long term isn't 30 years down the line. It's at the end of life. What is it all for? And if you ask yourselves the big questions, then it leads you to the center. I don't know if it seems like almost time for Salat. Is there any other? Should we just finish? Yeah. Inshallah, we can say a dua for the safety of Imam al-Zaman, inshallah, all together. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم كن وليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا معينا حتى تسكنوا أرضك طوعا وتمتعوا